Welcome to this episode of Musically Cogitating, a podcast about the relevance and importance of living and contemporary music of all kinds, and about how that music impacts our everyday lives. I am your host, Ciyadh. Thank you so much for joining me here today on yet another Podcast Wednesday. And like I say at the beginning of every show, any of the links, anything that I find important will be in the show notes wherever you are listening to this here podcast. Today, I thought I would bring you a new topic, a new concept, if you will, of course, related to art, related to music, but something that I am noticing that I am seeing and that I want to kind of do myself. And this thought came from having spent a lot of time recently reading books, which is probably no surprise because we have a book club on this here show, but I like to read books. And I've sort of been binging books, if you will. No one ever talks about how they binge books. They talk about how negative or bad it is for our health to binge perhaps like a TV show or something, but no one ever talks about if there are any negative side effects to binging books. So if there are, let me know. But I read some books and I feel good. I feel great about it. So I'm going to say that this was a positive book binge for me. And I'm not really a person who has a really rigid book TBR. And if you are unfamiliar, a TBR is a to be read list. So theoretically, these lists hold all of the books or essays or things that you want to read. So it's a TBR, it's a to read, it's a to be read list. And they're great because they allow you to keep up with what you've been told or you've decided that you want to read. And for a lot of people, I think they usually go in order of when they added things, so that there is sort of a hierarchy, or for some people there is an order of importance that, you know, they want to maintain as they read through the list. And I think, you know, if that works for you, that's awesome. But that's really kind of like what a TBR is. And it helps you to remember also what you own or what you don't, so that you don't continue to buy the same book. So for some people, their TBRs are just their personal libraries and they try to keep up with everything that way. And, you know, there are more books in the world available to us than any one person can realistically ever read. And so I think the rise of like list making and taking notes and things like that has really made keeping a TBR sort of trendy. I'm not going to get into that, the trendiness of it, but of course, like, I think it's a cool thing. And so I have some semblance of this in an app called Book Track. And I'm not a really hardcore TBR person, but I have just like a list of books in Book Track that if I hear about, I'll just add to it. So I don't really read what's up next on that list. I just kind of read what I feel like reading. I'm much more of a person who reads based on feel rather than what a list tells me to. Even if I created the list, I don't really go off of that list. And this really works for me. It keeps reading really fun for me, which right now is the point. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's not supposed to be something that stresses me out or gives me anxiety. It's just, reading is supposed to be fun. And sure, whenever I'm doing a research project or something that has a more defined outcome, yeah, I keep a TBR because I have to, because if I don't get through those papers or those books, then my research won't turn out the way that I want it to. But even still, I don't really, when I'm doing a research project, it's not really a firm TBR. It's really more of a like, I should make sure I get through these types of things. So that's my take on a TBR for books. And I think a lot of people keep lists, and some people just keep lists, wherever they buy books and things like that. But those are TBRs. And because it's early in the year, I see a lot of people making their TBR lists for the upcoming year. And people are setting goals for things that they want to read. And we are all telling ourselves that this year we are not going to buy any new books, even though we know we probably will. And yeah, I do have a reading goal in books that I want to make sure that I read because the topics are exciting or because the topics are things that I'm interested in. But I've never really heard anyone say that they want to keep a musical listening list or a TBL, if you will. And I think that we should. So this is me bringing that connection of books and things that I love and bringing that over into music, which is also a thing that I love. And I'm in the process always of kind of rediscovering and upkeeping my love of being a person who listens to music, who consumes music, because some of that got a little lost in the act of making music, the art making, the music making for me. And so it's been really important for me to continue to cultivate that love of listening. And I think that we should do that through keeping a TBL, a to be listening list. And we should keep these same lists in the way that we tell ourselves, hey, I want to watch all of the James Bond films, for instance, or I want to read all of the books in the Dune series. And we should do this. And music is so incredibly important to our lives. So if we tell ourselves we're going to listen to this book or read the book or watch these movies, why can't we do the same for music? Music is all around us, right? It's when we go in the store to buy something, when we're watching a TV show, it's there, it's in the movies, it's mentioned in books. And yeah, we don't commit ourselves to listening to music in the same way that we do with reading. We don't give ourselves the permission to make that same investment in books and other long form writing or media. And why not? We should do that. Music is so incredibly valuable to me and to you and to so many people. There's so much of it in the world that it should be something that we commit ourselves to understanding more and to spending more time with. And I think it's easy for us to brush it off and say, oh, well, it's only 3 minutes. Why do I need to put that on a list to make sure I listen to it? And it's because it's important to you, because you think that it can give you something, it can give you meaning, it can make you feel a certain way. Then you should put it on a list. You should make sure that you get to it. You should have just a little bit of intentionality behind consuming music. It's sometimes for me it's becoming a hobby, right? I am cultivating a hobby of sitting in the dark and listening to music and just being with the music, the same way that I am cultivating a love of sitting on my couch, turning off the TV and picking up a book that I want to read and to consume and to be engulfed in story and learning and knowledge. Music gives me all of those same things, and I'm sure it gives many of us those same things. So we should commit ourselves to keeping up with it the same way that we keep up with all of the things that are happening in books. We should have a list of music that we want to get through and get through in a way that is positive, right? Not again a list of things we want to quote get through that stress us out, but a list of things that excites us, that presents possibility and opportunity and joy most of the time. Although of course we know that sometimes music is really sad, but we should still listen to it. We should still be with the music, and we have to do that in a way that isn't always so casual, right? I think it's really easy for us to get in our car or do whatever we're doing where we listen to music and we just click on something and we allow that to overcome us. We allow Spotify, we allow Apple Music, we allow whatever it is, the algorithm, to dictate and to decide what we are going to listen to. But we should take that into our own hands and have a list. We should be following things. We should be investigating and exploring our listening lists, our favorite kinds of music. And sure, this playlist that you make, this list of things that you want to listen to, it's going to be aspirational, right? I aspire to read all of the books that I keep in book track, but I know that I will never get to all of them, but that doesn't mean that it's not important for me to keep up with it. That just means that I'm going to do my hardest to be really diligent about listening or reading, in the case of reading books, the things that are on that list. And so the way that I have tried to really do this is to just keep a simple playlist in Apple Music, and when I come across something, I just add it to that playlist. And I've not been diligent about keeping up with the playlist or about listening to the things that are on it at all. But I really, really want to, again, cultivate that sort of TBL, that to be listened list in this, next period of time. And for you, you can be as simple with this, or you can be as complex. Now, of course, I have lots of complexity, and I will continue to add layers upon layers to this complexity of keeping up with these lists as time goes on. But you can be simple about it. For me, music listening is as much work related because, I'm a musician, I create things, and that is work. But it is a part of my hobby as, I guess, a person who loves to listen to and to consume music. So these are kind of the systems that I'm going to use. And of course, the simplest system that I'm going to use and that you can use is, like I said, to keep a playlist in your streaming service, if you use a streaming service, because I'm assuming that there is at least one person in the same club as me who still listens to, of course, CDs and tapes and vinyl. So the easiest way to do that is to just make a playlist, and as you put things on that playlist, you listen to the playlist and you take them off after you are done listening to those things. So the TBL is supposed to be a living, breathing list, living, breathing playlist that is always changing. And, what you do with that music after you listen to it is up to you, but music should come off and go on, and it should be, in a cyclical fashion. So there should be a cycle that it goes through. If you are joining me in this physical journey, well, of course, the best way that you can do that is just to make a stack of CDs and vinyl that you want to listen to, and make sure that you work your way through that. So I'm going to be making sure that I work my way through my TBL, my physical TBL, which is going to be a stack of vinyl and CDs that I'm going to make my way through. Another system that I have set up is through Music Harbor. And Music Harbor allows you to follow artists, and then when that artist is going to release a new album or a new single or EP or something, or even a feature, Music Harbor will put that in like a list, and it'll show you. And so I'm going to make sure that when Music Harbor tells me that there's something new from this artist that I want to listen to, I'm going to make sure that I add it to that playlist, and then I'm going to go through that playlist at least once a week or once every other week when it feels right. I'm not going to make myself a calendar event to, yes, at 3 p.m. every Friday I'm going to explore my TBL, but rather it's going to be a really natural thing that I go to probably every couple of weeks. So that's the cadence at which I think I will listen to that particular TBL playlist. And because I am a person who has lots of lists, there will probably be a list somewhere with just albums and things that I want to make sure I check out. So nothing too fancy. But the key to any TBL, right, or even your regular old TBR, is to just not forget about it. Because I do this thing, and I'm sure you might do this thing too, where it's like out of sight, out of mind. And it took me a really long time using Book Track to just make sure that I kept up with my TBR, my loose TBR. And so this will be the same way of just making sure that I don't forget about it. And I think this is exciting to me, to have a list of new things or new to me things or things that I want to become re-engaged with. And so I think it'll be easy for me to keep up with it now that I am excited about it. And I think keeping a TBL will surprise you. I think you'll learn something new. You'll discover something special in, one of these songs, one of these pieces, one of these albums that you've been telling yourself that you're going to listen to, but that you just haven't gotten to yet. I think with just a little bit of intentionality, we find so much more than when we just leave it up to, the whims of the algorithm to give us some music. And yeah, this doesn't mean that you only listen to this playlist or this stack of records, because I do believe in spontaneity and serendipity in music listening the same way that I believe in that when reading. But I also believe that we should think about it, because music is more than just something that we put in the background when we're reading or cooking or driving in our cars or talking to our friends. Music is special, it is important, and it deserves to be treated as such. So that is your TBL guide, the guide to the TBL. I, of course, am going to continue to think about this, to iterate on my system for listening, and I'm going to share that with you. But I really hope that this episode helps you to think about listening to new things or new to you things or old things that you want to re-listen to or rediscover in a really intentional way, using just a simple or as complex as you want list to keep up with that. Since this show is about music, I'm going to give you something to add to your TBL, which for this week is called Still Wonder by Alex Isley and Jack Dine featuring Robert Glasper. And this is a really great track, and I've been listening to it many times since I started listening to it earlier this week. So put that on your TBL, listen to it, and let me know what you think. Of course, don't forget to follow the show on social media and to visit the website, because I'm updating that website constantly, adding new posts and things like that. So it's a lot of fun. Be sure to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, and if it's available to you on Spotify, that would be awesome as well. You can support the show by buying a coffee using the Buy Me a Coffee link, support the show link, or buying a t-shirt, a musically cogitating subtlety, if you will. So that's all I have for you today, folks. I'll be back very, very soon in 2 weeks with the next episode of the Musically Cogitating podcast. Until then.